Macmillan Audio presents An Irish Country Christmas by Patrick Taylor. Read for you by John Keating. Chapter 1. Recommend the Old Inn to Every Friend. Barry Laverty, Dr. Barry Laverty, slammed the door of Brunhild, his elderly Volkswagen Beetle. He hunched his shoulders against the sleet and hurried across the car park of the Old Inn in Crawfordsburn, County Down. Night comes early in December in Northern Ireland, and at 4:30 in the afternoon it was barely light enough for him to make out the leafless branches of trees tossing and swaying in the gale. But he could hear the wind battering its way through the glen behind the hotel. He pushed through the inn's double front door and went down 3 steps into a well-lit lobby. Blinking at the brightness, he twitched his shoulders up and his neck down as a trickle of water found its way under his collar. "Hello, John," he said to the manager, who stood behind a reception desk at the far side of the lobby. The middle-aged man looked up and smiled. "Good afternoon, Doctor." A little more than a year ago he would have said, "How's about you, Barry?" The Old Inn was only a few miles away from Barry's parents' home in Bangor. During his years as a medical student, he'd often popped in here for a quick pint, and John had been standing in reception for as long as Barry could remember. "Dirty day out there," John observed. "I'm half foundered." Barry rubbed his hands together. "There's a nice cosy fire lit in the parlour bar, sir." "I'm going to the reception." "The Donnelly McAteer party's in the guests' lounge, but Dr. O'Reilly's just gone into the parlour bar. He said to tell you if you came in." Typical, Barry thought, of Fingal Flaherty O'Reilly, the senior man in the practice where Barry worked, to be slipping out to the bar for a quick drink. He knew Julie McAteer's parents were pioneers, teetotalers, so the party would be what was called in Ulster an orange juice reception. "Thanks." Barry shrugged out of his raincoat. "I'll just park this and then nip in and get warm." He caught a glimpse of himself in a mirror mounted at the back of the coat stand. Blue eyes, with dark rings beneath, looked back from an oval face. At 24, he was too young for the dusky half-circles to be a permanent feature. But he'd attended a confinement for most of the night. Although he might be tired, he thought the woman he'd just delivered of a healthy 7-pound, 5-ounce boy would be a lot more so. He yawned. His fair hair was darkened, soaked and plastered to his scalp. At least his cow's lick wasn't sticking up like the crest on a tufted duck. Barry hung his coat, ran his hands over his hair, turned and walked along a short, carpeted corridor to the bar. He wondered if Colette the barmaid, a big, motherly woman, would be on duty tonight. This part of the building, he knew, had been an old coaching inn built in 1614, and generations of owners had very sensibly preserved the whitewashed daub and wattle walls and the heavy, rough-hewn, black-ceiling beams. C.S. Lewis had stayed here in 1958 with his wife, Joy, for what he called a perfect fortnight. Barry went through a door to his left into a low-ceilinged room where a turf fire blazed in a wide grate. After the bitter cold of the day outside, the heat was stifling, but the scent of the burning peat was familiar and comforting to him. There were several men in the room, most standing at the bar, a few in booths beside the wall. Barry heard a murmuring of conversation. The smells of damp tweed and cigarette smoke mingled with the aroma of peat. He could hear the sleet outside rattling off the curtained windows. "You!" roared Dr. Fingal Flaherty O'Reilly, who stood leaning against the bar. "Looked like a drowned rat. Come on in and have a jar." "Thanks, Fingal." "What'll you have?" Barry rapidly rubbed his hands together, feeling them tingle as the circulation returned. "Hot Irish, please." O'Reilly turned to the barmaid, who stood behind the marble-topped bar.
"Sample complete. Ready to continue?"